After the most consequential week in college football history, Brett Yormark said the Big 12 is open for business. What does that mean? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, we talk how Brett Yormark is open for business and what that means. We'll also try to kick Utah out of the Big 12. Is that a thing that's going to be done? And Florida State and Clemson are not going to the SEC. That's how we'll close out today. But first, Brett Yormark has taken the podium. Again, one of the most consequential weeks in college football history, where we learned that student athletes are going to be employees of the university. I talked to one college coach this week that said, I still don't really know what it means. I still don't really know from a Title IX standpoint where we go. I don't know if it kills the Big 12. I don't know if you're going to have to start doing what Jamie Pollard at Iowa State did and cutting off projects that are building new facilities and trying to focus your efforts outside of NIL and towards revenue sharing. There are a lot of questions going on. And maybe the biggest question is, how do you make money in modern college football? How does your conference stay alive via revenue, dollars? It's the only way to do it. The reason the Pac-12 fell apart is because at some point down the road, from a TV standpoint especially, it was not valuable enough to stay together, and USC and UCLA darted. In the ACC, Florida State and Clemson are leaving. And in the Big 12, you don't have a Florida State and Clemson. I don't think that Utah is going to leave the conference tomorrow to try to go to the ACC, or Kansas State is going to try its own in the SEC, or that Oklahoma State's going to the Big Ten. Those things aren't going to happen. So what Brett Yormark has to do is not sit on his hands and play the defensive, but instead go on offense in the same way that he went to the Pac-12 and got Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and Arizona State. That is the direction the Big 12 has to go, based on not even just the TV revenue side, not even just the revenue in general side, but college football playoff valuations for every conference that have the Big 12 at fourth in America right now in the share that they get from the CFP. Ross Dellinger reports the Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark said, I've said from day one, we are open for business. I guess you could say that we are open for business more than ever. Business is with what? The goal in mind to make money, to create extra revenue, and Brett Yormark's going to do that. What I love is the Dellinger caveat, the second tweet that he puts out over the weekend. This is a follow-up to the quote. Brett Yormark declares that he is not searching for new expansion members. My immediate reaction to this was, we are open for business. But I didn't. Never mind. It doesn't, like, I get what he's doing, trying to cover his tail there at the back end and say, like, we're open for business, and that doesn't mean we're trying to expand. That's not how it goes. That's not why Brett Yormark fought tooth and nail with the College Football Playoff Committee and said, look, with the board, and said, look, can we have a look-in clause? I know we're getting the shaft, the short end of the stick here. I can't really push back on the numbers you're giving us in TV revenue, but in a couple of years, based on how expansion goes, could we have the option to look into the contract and change it based on every conference's members? He didn't say that with the expectation that the same 16 teams would be here and somehow the Big 12 would be more profitable. That is a great and that's an awesome goal. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to sit with these 16 teams and over the course of the next 3 years become the SEC or the Big Ten, or get even close to the SEC or the Big Ten from a revenue number standpoint. What Brett Yormark has to do then is go to the ACC and say, look, who around here is a valuable enough member that if I bring you in my conference, you're going to make me money. The College Football Playoff Committee is going to give me more money because you're here. So what Yormark is saying is, we are open for business now more than ever. I don't think that means he's going to Memphis or to USF. I don't think that Brett Yormark is saying that he's open for business to go and get Boise State or San Diego State. I don't think he's saying he's open for business, but completely opposed to expansion. Maybe he's not on the phone right now with Miami. Maybe he's not on the phone right now with NC State, but those are the conversations that have to go moving forward. If the Big 12 wants to stay alive, you have to expand. Now, look, I am someone who I would personally consider myself anti-Rutgers USC being a conference game. I grew up watching some classic Oklahoma State games. I grew up watching some classic Baylor and Oklahoma games. I grew up watching unreal conference matchups that have been taken away from us now. It's not a good thing. But what we've learned in the last week, especially, is if you don't have the money, you don't stay alive in college. And now as schools are paying their athletes as employees, as athletes they're going to have to pay taxes on the money they made from their employer, the university they play for. The Big 12's got a lot of things to figure out. They're in a good spot. They're in a spot better than the ACC. Nobody's trying to leave right now. Utah especially is not. They're in a better spot than the ACC, but still, what this conference has to do is add more. Brett Yormark knows it. Brett Yormark alluded to it. When you say that we are open for business, that doesn't exactly imply, hey, we're open for business, but we're not going to expand. You are the one, Brett Yormark, who asked for the look-in because of further expansion. I don't think that in asking for that look-in, you were avoiding that. You want to make money, you want to stay alive, go grab Louisville. That's the first team that I want. And probably hold on to Utah. There was murmur last week that Utah was going to leave the Big 12. That's stupid. Now somebody wants to kick them out. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive with eBay Motors. Look, I got a Nissan Maxima sitting outside right now. It's got a plastic part hanging down from the bottom of it. So what do I do when I have that plastic part hanging down from the bottom of my Nissan Maxima? And it makes a noise every time I drive and folks stare at me. I cut it off with a pair of scissors. And I go to eBay Motors and I say, eBay Motors, I need passion, drive, and patience. Can you give me that part, whatever plastic part it was? So I do, Nissan Maxima, plastic part underneath. Hey, that looks right. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, it's guaranteed to fit every time. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. That is eBay Motors for your MVP. Is it time to kick Utah out of the Big 12? Have the Utes, and even down to Kyle Whittingham, the football coach, made too much of a stink early on? The murmurs of Utah going to the ACC, is that too much that Utah should be taken out of the fold altogether? We move forward with somebody who wants to be here like a Washington State. No. And it is very, very asinine to believe that. I'll transparently here, Twitter account, Big 12 analyst CW Lambert, who I've never had any issues with, never had a problem with any content the guys put out, has started a petition where 193 wise souls, as he says, have signed. It's now up to 426 signatures. It started at 193 when he put the first tweet out, have said that Utah should be kicked out of the Big 12. Here is what Chris Lambert writes. Dear esteemed members of the Big 12 Executive Membership Committee and Commissioner Brett Yormark, we, the undersigned fans of the 15 of Big 12's 15 members, hereby call upon conference leadership to take immediate action to expel the University of Utah from the Big 12 Conference. Rationale for expulsion. I'm going to jump to that. Attitude is his first one he puts. The University of Utah and its fans exhibit undesirable traits such as Machiavellianism, is that the right? Narcissism and psychopathy. So that's not good. He says selfishness. The University of Utah, by its actions and comments, has made it clear it sees its membership in the Big 12 as a marriage of covenants and will abandon the conference at the first opportunity. He also writes foolishness. The arrogance and lack of wisdom exhibited by Utah's senior leadership played a critical role in the downfall of the Pac-12. So he's saying, in essence, Utah doesn't want to be here. They're ungrateful. The fan base is not up to par with Big 12 fan bases. Doesn't have that kind of blue collar appeal, and that Utah was the bug inside of the Pac-12 that ultimately killed the conference. Now, I do want to sit on that part right there. And again, direct quote from Lambert. Media reports indicate Utah President Taylor Randall convinced other Pac-12 leaders to reject the media rights contract offered by ESPN and Fox due to Randall's belief the Pac-12 deserved $50 million in the Big 12 security depends on wise leadership, not the folly exhibited by President Randall and the University of Utah. Now, here is where I will go to my friend Mr. Lambert and say, hey, wait a second. I remember some of these conversations. Here about 6 months ago, it was, hey, if the Big 12 goes to 16, then you now have 8 voting members who aren't original Big 12 members, and you really only have a handful of schools that are true original Big 12 teams based on how TCU and West Virginia got added in a decade ago. So are you allowing the kind of the roots, the pure nature of the league to be diluted by 8 new members who could outvote or evenly vote the original 8 or that hateful 8? I was worried about that. And if you go to 20, then you have a lot less power if you're Texas Tech. If you go to 20, you have less power as a TCU, as a Baylor, as a West Virginia, for those schools that kind of make up and represent what the Big 12 has always been about. So I understand why there is a worry here that a school, Utah or anybody else, could at some point flip the script on everybody else and sway voting within the Big 12 conference. Do I think it'll happen? Hopefully not, obviously, but it's certainly possible, and anything can happen in college athletics. Though, when I first read this petition, I thought, well, I'm not going to sign this, and I really hope it's parity. There was no, and Utah was clear about this last week, there was no 0 ounce of truth that the university, Dick Weiss, the Dick guy, posted that Utah was looking for a possible way out of the Big 12 and had these, underneath the table conversations with the ACC about jumping over. And we all collectively looked around the room and said, why? That's the stupidest thing in the world. What would Utah have any business leaving the Big 12 for right now, based on the brand that the Big 12 is, the power the Big 12 has over the ACC, and just in general, that would be, very stupid. Utah is not looking to leave the Big 12. And granted, let me give you this. As someone who has been before a bit upset or discouraged by the discourse from Utah fans, by the rhetoric from a fan base that by and large seems happy to be in the Big 12, but there is a sect, a vocal sect, that really, really dislikes the Big 12 conference and being here. That is the case. That part is objective. There is a whole just group of Utah fans that are spiteful about being in the Big 12. As someone who has been burned by that before, I get the malice. But from the administration, at the very least, there's been nothing but positive things said about the Big 12 conference. And this league, if we're honest with each other, saved Utah. I know. Go ahead, throw something, start crying, start screaming. This league saved Utah. If the Big 12 doesn't pick up the phone and give the Utes a call after Colorado, Arizona State are there. And I know that Utah was hesitant. They thought maybe they could keep the Pac-12 together because, again, with that this whole TV conundrum where they denied ESPN and Fox original offer that in essence killed the conference, Utah was keen on helping build it back. Had they stayed on the ship and ridden it down, they would be where Washington State and Oregon State are, at least for now. The Big Ten wasn't going to extend an offer to Utah. Otherwise, they would have done it, and Utah certainly would have accepted it. I would get why you, a Utah fan, would prefer your team to be in the Big Ten. If I'm anybody, from a revenue standpoint and a overall health standpoint, you certainly want the Big Ten and the SEC more than the Big 12. I get that. I'm willing to admit that. Utah didn't get it. What about the ACC? They got Cal and Stanford and SMU. I don't think that life raft over there was front in line for Utah. And if they were, and Utah wanted to go to the ACC, then they probably would have done it, but they didn't. The Big 12 stepped in and in essence saved Utah. The conference already had BYU. I mean, this league has BYU that many could consider to be the flagship program of that state. And it was never a worry of, do we have to have Utah? This conference saved them. That's not a bad thing. I get why they wanted to stay in the Pac-12. It's the conference that made them not relevant in college athletics, but put them in a power, made them a power brand even more so, put them in a power conference. And I understand leaving that is hard, but they're not going to leave the Big 12. And we probably shouldn't do a petition to kick them out, because Brett Yormark's not going to wake up tomorrow and go, these guys are assholes. See ya. It's not exactly how that works. So I think for the time being, at the very least, Utah is to use Kyle Whittingham's words, I don't know, anything can happen. I don't even know we'll be playing BYU in 3 years. Though the rhetoric from their side can sometimes be snarky, that's not going to warrant kicking Utah out of the Big 12. And if you think that it is, you are, for lack of a better, silly. This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, FanDuel is the place to be for the NHL and the NBA playoffs. The finals are coming up. It is the Dallas Mavericks. It is the Boston Celtics. It's winner take all in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Look, I know the Boston Celtics are big favorites right now in the NBA championship, but that gives you an even better gives you an even better chance to win more money on the Dallas Mavericks, who are pretty scrappy, and I wouldn't bet against Luka Doncic right now. So you take the Dallas Mavericks at FanDuel, put $5, you win, you get $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more at FanDuel.com/locked on. America's number one sportsbook, FanDuel.com/locked on. Florida State and Clemson are not going to the SEC, at least not yet. And Greg Sankey has been fairly clear on the subject that after taking Texas and Oklahoma, the league was not ready to jump right back into somebody else. And Petiti in the Big Ten, their commissioner, is kind of in the opposite. That league, like the Big 12, is still open for business. Now, you'll remember about a month ago, Brett McMurphy, one of those guys, put out an article that said there's an emergency scenario in which Clemson and Florida State go to the Big 12. That's not like meteors could fall from the sky. That's not going to happen. Them going to the SEC. It was the prevalent, like, oh, you know what? They're out of the ACC. I mean, that it's like geographically it would make sense. They're both pretty good power brands, but that's not going to happen. It sounds like Sankey, and really, by and large, the SEC powers that be, having their little tallies and like, hey, should we take them? Said no. And that's not, it's like that's not truth. That's not written. It's not in stone. They can't take Florida State and Clemson. But where the SEC is, I don't think they dislike their current spot. So spiting Florida State, who's wanted to be an SEC team for a long time, spiting Clemson, who I don't believe yet has a brand that's SEC worthy, they are okay with that. And here's the reason that I say Clemson does not have a brand that's SEC worthy yet, is let's take that school 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They had less football revenue than Bowling Green. Bad. Clemson they had the national championship in the 1990s, became fairly irrelevant after that. Nobody saw Clemson as a power in college football. 10 years ago, that script completely flips. Dabo Swinney builds them into one of the best programs of the last decade, probably the second best program of the last decade, with a couple of national championships, a myriad of college football playoff appearances. And I know you can't exactly look at things this way in the hypothetical scenarios, but I'm going to need you to bear with me for a second with Clemson. Think about this. Clemson is your everyday Kansas State. Clemson it's Clemson's Mississippi State. Clemson is Ole Miss, just kind of that team that was in the middle of the pack. And from EADA revenue standpoint, they're still not great. They're in like the 25 to 30 range in revenue in the country, and that's not spectacular. The SEC's not sticking its neck out for that. That's with them being stupid good. So if you had Kansas State go on a 10-year run of 6 college football playoff appearances and 2 national championships the next decade, everybody's going to point and say, I want that. Chris Kleiman is doing a hell of a job at Kansas State. I want them in my conference. Then the day that Chris Kleiman, Dabo Swinney, says, hey guys, it's been fun. I'm hanging it up. I'm retiring, going elsewhere. Hey, want to spend more time with my family? I'm going to the NFL, whatever it might be. Then in 3 years, I know it's a tough hypothetical, in 3 years, Clemson or Kansas State or whoever it is bad at football again. What did they give you? What did they give you? Now, did you just bring on another Mississippi State in the SEC? Because let me tell you this. If Texas is bad at football for 5 years, 10 years, they're still Texas. I mean, give them their flowers. If Oklahoma's bad at football for 5 years, 10 years, they're not Texas, but they're still a damn good program. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, even there are solidified. Nebraska's a great example of this, and Tennessee is up there. The programs that withstand losing, that when they are not good, they are still valuable enough to be power players in college football. That is who the SEC wants. They want the power players who are going to carry that conference into the new unknown that we are now paying athletes as players, and expansion has gone blown up crazy, and now we could have super leagues. And the SEC probably doesn't look at Clemson or Kansas State and say, yeah, we know you have long-term solidified success to the point that we could take you and take a chance on you. Because if Clemson is bad for 5 years, they're not going to be valuable. And you already have a school in South Carolina that has, when they are halfway decent, a better brand than Clemson. They are the flagship school of that state. And I'm sorry of Clemson, but there is still not solidified, like rock solid, even when Clemson is bad, they are good for you. That's what Texas is. That's what Alabama is. That's what LSU is. Again, it's like Auburn. Auburn's like that. Clemson's not. The Big Ten has seemed to want to add and add ad nauseum. They could very well do that with Clemson and get away with it. They can certainly do it with Florida State. The Florida State one's one that I struggle to get around on a little bit more. The one thing to note for the Big 12 here as well is there is the hope that this Clemson Florida State thing is figured out quickly enough that we then go strike on whoever the Big 12 can get from the ACC. Brett Yormark says business is open. So to me, it's like this domino trickle effect. And the dominoes even start with conversations in 2016 or like a Northwestern trying to make this, there's like a suit with Northwestern to see if athletes can be paid. I mean, there's all these things that have gotten us to where we are today over the last 10 years in the craziness of the last 10 days. And the biggest piece that I'm looking for is Florida State and Clemson, based on their landing spot where they go. That then opens the door for the Big 12. That opens the floodgates for the Big 12 to go to 20 teams. And that's the goal. That's got to be the goal for the Big 12 to go to 20 teams. So Florida State, Clemson, here's my plea to you. SEC, maybe. Don't hold out hope. Big 10, sure. That'd be great. Big 12, Brett McMurphy said it's a possibility. I stumble over my words saying because I think it's so asinine, but sure, there's an emergency scenario according to McMurphy where they do. Here's what I need from you two. I'm pleading with you. Leave. Bring North Carolina with you. Many people are saying that the ACC can stay alive with North Carolina as long as they stay around. Here's my thing. You go out the door. North Carolina goes with you. The Big 12 picks up Louisville. The Big 12 calls Miami because nobody else calls Miami and says, hey, Miami, how you doing? Miami's one of those. That's like a Clemson where it's like, when you're bad, what do you give me? When you're bad, what do you get? Is it enough for the SEC to say yes, the Big 10 to say yes? I don't think so. I think Miami's kind of stuck in limbo and they're going to be a Big 12 school. And that's when the look-in clause comes about in a couple of years and the College Football Playoff Committee says, the Big 12, you have added Miami, you've added Louisville, you've added Pitt, and you added NC State. This is good. We're going to give you more money. You're the third best conference out there. We're going to close the gap a bit between you, the SEC, and the Big Ten. You know what? We take what Trev Albert said about there being an expense problem. We got a couple people on staff, and the schools have more money, and they're paying their athletes $22 million a year, and bada bing. The Big 12 is not just relevant, but still in the thick of things. So Clemson, Florida State, the SEC says no. That makes sense. The Big 12 would say yes. Too bad you wouldn't take us. And after that, the hunt begins. Come up tomorrow, Wednesday. Quickly, the offseason for June and July. Locked On Big 12 is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday release, or maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I haven't decided, but 3 shows a week because Dad needs a vacation, please. I'm actually in a vacation right now. I'm seeing Tyler Childers in Virginia Beach. Why not? Buy the ticket. That's my new life slogan, I think. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. No se grande.